Our first and only reading is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 14, starting with the first verse. Please stand if you are able. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who has invited both of you may come to you and say, "Please, give this person your place." And then in disgrace you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, "Friend, move up." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He also said to the one who had invited them, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers, or your relatives, or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. And you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Here ends today's readings.
Thanks be to God. Last week, I shared an old folk tale about what heaven and hell were like. Now remember, this isn't my story, it's a folk tale. So please hear me as I provide a quick recap of that story again for those who missed it last week or for those who just want a little refresher. The folk tale answers the question, what is hell like? And it says that hell is like a huge banquet, and the table is filled with all your favorite foods. You are allowed to eat all that you want, no counting calories. You can even start with dessert or eat dessert only. However, one of your arms is tied behind your back, and the other has a 3-foot-long spoon duct taped to your hand. There is no way for you to eat this amazing food. All you can do is look at it and to smell its delicious aroma. The folktale also answers what heaven is like. Says that heaven is like a huge banquet, a table that is filled with all your favorite foods. You are permitted to eat as much as you want. You can even start with dessert or eat dessert only. However, one of your hands is tied behind your back and the other has a 3-foot spoon duct taped to it. In this story, heaven and hell are identical, except that in heaven, people are eating because they're feeding each other. This week's lectionary reading, gospel reading that Al just shared with us, is also about a banquet. And Jesus shares some things with us about banquet dining. The first thing we learn from Jesus today is that we are not to grab the best seat at the table, in case someone more important than us shows up and be invited to sit next to the host. How embarrassing it would be to have to get up and give up your seat to someone else. Jesus instructs instead to take the seat at the kiddies' table. And just maybe later the host will invite us to sit at the big people's table. But can you see the problem here? Those Pharisees were pretty smart. And they caught on real quickly that the best seat at a banquet was the lowest seat. So they flaunted their false humility and sat in the lowest seat, fully expecting to be invited to sit closer to the host. Jesus goes on to teach that when we have banquets, we should be sure to invite the lowest, the poorest, the least respected, the ones who couldn't possibly repay our generosity, and have them sit at the seats of honor. So what does this mean for us? Well, Jesus is telling us that we really got to turn the tables in our relationships. Not by seeking out a place of honor and therefore being exalted, nor should we be sitting in the lowest place with the idea of being exalted later on. Jesus mischievously rebukes these practices that those Pharisees were doing. He sends us out on a different kind of mission, with a different kind of purpose in our dining. A journey in which being exalted has nothing to do with it. A dining experience that isn't about us, it's about others. In a goal, Jesus is saying it's all about love. But not just any kind of love. Jesus calls us to a love that is freed from any crass attempts at self-importance, at scoring points, at trying to earn righteousness. Jesus calls us to love for love's sake. That's the gift and the goal all wrapped into one. Jesus invites us to love that doesn't have an ulterior motive, doesn't have schemes for trying to get advantage. It's just a truly generous love. A love that doesn't seek to be repaid. A love that just wants to feed others. Okay, so now let's bring this a little closer to home. What does banquet dining look like in our lives today? Think about family meals, holiday celebrations, reunions. Think about our church dinners, fellowships, even worship. How can we bring more joy to the banquet? What could we do to bring more of heaven to earth at our gatherings? Who could we invite? Who could we feed? Because when we feed others, we ourselves are fed. Love is the only purpose we have in this lifetime. It's our meaning, it's our purpose. And each of us will serve that purpose differently in our own unique ways. But we take the love that has been given to us And we freely pour it out on others, just like it was freely poured onto us at our baptisms. And thereby, we increase the love in this world, making it a little bit more like heaven. My brothers and sisters, receive the love of God. We can't love everybody else if we have not first received God's love through and through us. So fill to the brim your love tank through prayer, meditation, music, fellowship, worship, Bible reading, whatever it takes to fill your love tank. Then seek out the lowly, the rejected, the disrespected, the hurting, the spiritually starving. See them through the eyes of God's grace-filled love. Pour forth compassion, understanding, and love all over them. Imagine the peace we will bring to this world if we let go of judging, condemning, and fighting, and instead just welcome and feed and heal and include everyone. Imagine the joy we will experience together as we feed each other from the banquet of God's love. Thy kingdom come, O Lord. Amen. Please join in singing